Evening, Council. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order? Councillors Moore, Deputy Correll, I believe your camera is not on quite yet, and Garwood. That the regular meeting of Council of the Township of Springwater of May 3rd come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? And that has carried. And we will now have the singing of our national anthem. O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all commend. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. Thank you. Councils, are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? And seeing none, I will now call upon Rick Monkman to present a delegation regarding Stonegate traffic issues. Please join us.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. First off, I'd like to thank you on behalf of the residents in Stonegate subdivision and people that live along Sunnydale Road that use Stonegate subdivision to walk and enjoy the scenery in that subdivision in the evenings. I would like to start off by asking this question. What is a risk? A risk is a situation involving an exposure to danger. It's exposure to a danger of a person or a thing, and it can cause harm or a loss. Now, the next question is, what's a life safety risk? The failure to meet industry performance standards in response to threats, hazards, and risks in the community. There is a life safety risk when walking in Stonegate. Greater risk is walking along Sunnydale Road, and I think you can understand why. This is speeding in both locations. Stonegate subdivision currently has 50-kilometer-an-hour signs posted in it. With the help of Councillor Moore a few years ago, they were posted in there. Well, since then, numerous people, including delivery people and those that don't live there, take advantage of that and do 50 kilometers in that subdivision, and that's just too fast. It's dangerous for anybody to be walking along the street, and there's been numerous near misses, including myself. And there has been at least 3 incidents where I know of people lost control on Edgecombe Drive and ended up in the ditch. And in a couple of cases, they hit personal culverts causing damage and left the scene. And the homeowner was responsible for paying for the repairs. So it's become quite a problem. And we find that 50 kilometers an hour is just too fast in that subdivision. Now, it would be an unreasonable request to ask the OPP to do surveillance in there. It's a very small area. There's only 70 homes, and for them to be in there with a speed trap would be unrealistic and something we don't see as happening as compared to, say, Stone Manor subdivision, where you've got 800 homes. Violators are not only residents, but non-residents, and some of the worst offenders are delivery people. There's no sidewalks for anybody to walk in that subdivision when it was built in the early 1990s, and right now it would be cost prohibitive to install them now, not to mention the homeowners would be up in arms against them being installed because it would take up quite a bit of their property. So that is not a realistic outcome. And winter fashion right now is night high visibility vests, flashlights, and flashing lights on their clothing to try and become more visible. It's become that dangerous in that subdivision, even in the winter at night, that we have to resort to that. Some of the drivers, if you can believe it, like to play a game called pushback. And that's where they drive close to you, so you have to jump out of the way. That is an unsafe practice, especially in the wintertime, if you happen to slip and fall and they do run over you. I myself have had numerous close occasions of getting close to them. So what precipitated the survey that you've all had included in your packages? The residents started talking. We thought, let's see what everybody else thinks in the subdivision. I myself do not live in the subdivision. I'd like to bring that to light. I live on Sunnydale Road. I've been there since 1986. So we know quite a few of the people in the subdivision. So we thought, let's best go out and see what people believe is a risk, if there's a problem or isn't a problem. So we developed the survey and we delivered it to all 70 homes, and everybody had the opportunity to respond back. But I said to our group, there was three of us, I said, we need to specify what our goals are as a group. What do we want to do? So we wanted to first off identify if a risk for public safety actually existed in the subdivision. What do the other residents think? Then we wanted to suggest possible solutions to achieve mitigation of the risk. Then we wanted residents' input as to what they believe they wanted to see in the subdivision. We thought that was important to see, so we could pass that on to you. And then the final step we decided upon was we wanted to bring the information to you, to present to you, so you can make some good decisions based on what the residents believe they'd like to see done in the subdivision to make it much safer. We were quite surprised that out of the 70 questionnaires that were delivered, 31 responded back, which is 44%. I work on with surveys regularly, and a return of 44% is actually rather good. So that, first off, identified to us that people do believe there is a risk and a problem in the subdivision of speeding. The canvassers that went out did not influence anybody in their discussions. We wanted to be honest, transparent, non-biased survey, and we wanted people to tell us what they believed was needed. But we gave them, this is some of the traffic calming means we presented to them, but we didn't recommend any one of them. The group is not going to bring forth to you what we believe needs to be done. We brought forth a report that we put together as to what people would like to see. We believe that your staff and yourselves will make the proper decisions. We're not trafficologists, if you want to call them that. We're not experts in traffic control or traffic movement at all. But we strongly believe that something needs to be done to slow down the speed in that subdivision. Somebody's going to get hit. And in closing, decisions should not be based solely on traffic studies. An accident can happen in there, be it one vehicle or 40 vehicles. An accident can happen. So please don't make your final decision based on traffic studies, because they can be variant that you could have only one person walking in the subdivision at a time and only one car traveling on the streets, and they get hit. So it is problematic in basing it on just on that data alone. So we ask that you respectfully look at this information we've passed on to you. It's in your package, and I'm sure you'll make an informed decision in making that subdivision much safer for everybody to walk in. Again, thank you for your time, and I'm available for any questions if any of you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the delegation. Are there any questions or comments from council? Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Thank you, Mr. Monkman, for your presentation. I know this is a lot of time and energy for you, and so it's very much appreciated. I would like to propose a request to staff or to, sorry, I've just had to change my screen. General Ramdeo, if he's on the line. General, did I say that? General Manager. Yeah. Sorry, I've given you a new rank. Sorry, a promotion. Sorry, is he here? Oh, there you are. Sorry, General Manager. If we were to ask for a traffic calming report to come back from staff, can you just advise what that would include? What are the elements, all the elements included?
GM Ramdeo?
Thanks, Mayor Coghlan. Through you to Councillor Moore. It would begin with an assessment of a speed study. We'll go through the speed study. We'll go through all of the technical analysis as Mr. Monkman referred to. And based out of that, according to our township policy, we will bring something back. We could bring something back to council for then council to deliberate on and give us guidance there from that.
Hold on, please. General Manager, would you be able to incorporate then the recommendations in Mr. Monkman's report, including the speed cushions? I personally would like to know more about how those speed cushions could be implemented in different parts of our ward and township also. And so I'd really like to include what they've asked for, as well as maybe elaborate more on the speed cushions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through Mayor Coughlin to Councillor Moore. Yes, if this were something that council did ask us to do, my intention would be to reach out to Mr. Monkman, other residents, have a conversation about their ideas, and all of the evaluations would be in the report. All of the options available, including a do nothing, would be in the report for council to consider.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions from council? Councillor Moore?
Yes, so I'll direct through you, please, to the clerk. If you could read to me what you've prepared then for me to direct staff.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. The amendment, as requested by Councillor Moore, I've drafted that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to add, and that staff be directed to report back to council outlining possible traffic calming measures for consideration, including further information regarding the items outlined within the submitted petition.
And that's suffice. And just a seconder on that. Deputy Cabral. So as it was read before us, so the motion would then read, I guess that would be for the amendment first. Yes, thank you. So for the amendment, council, all those in favor? Perfect. And now I'll ask for a mover and seconder to receive the delegation and also as amended. Councillor Moore and Fisher. That the delegation from Rick Monkman, my apologies, regarding Stonegate traffic issues be received, and that staff are directed to report back to council outlining possible traffic calming measures for consideration, including further information regarding the items outlined within the submitted petition. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. And in closing, I would just like to thank Mrs. Pat Bound and Mr. Tom Saris for doing a lot of the footwork in the subdivision and speaking to the residents, dropping out the questionnaires, surveys, and I have left the completed surveys with staff here, so you can reference them if you would like to see them at all.
Okay. Thank you very
again.
much. Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth, have there been any submissions received for question period?
Thank you. There have been no submissions received for this evening's meeting.
We will now move on to item 6, our minutes. May I have a mover and seconder for the minutes of council, please? Councillors Thompson and Fisher. That the minutes of council listed herein be approved as presented. The minutes, 1, the minutes of the special meeting of council of April 12th, 2023. 2, the minutes of the special meeting of council closed session of April 12th, 2023. 3, the minutes of special meeting of council, a public meeting on April 12th, 2023. And 4, the minutes of a regular meeting of council on April 19th, 2023. Are there any questions on these minutes? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. We'll now move on to the minutes of boards and committees. May I have a mover and seconder to receive the minutes of boards and committees and other organizations? Deputy Cabral and Councillor Garwood. That the minutes of the boards, committees, and other organizations listed herein be received for information. The minutes of the Elmville BIA meeting of March 16th, 2023. The minutes of the Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting of May 26th, 2021. And that the minutes of the Special Agricultural Advisory Committee meeting on June 23rd, 2021. Are there any questions on any of these minutes? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. For our action reports, first off, we have 7.1, which is our communications options. May I have a mover and seconder for the communications options report? I have Councillors Garwood and Deputy Cabral. So I guess we'd have the conversation first, but that I will just turn now to council. Yeah, actually, if I can go to Ms. Audette, that would be great.
Good evening, Council. Through you, Your Worship, to Council. This report has been drafted in response to a notice of motion brought forward at the February 15th meeting of Springwater Council. The motion read, moved by Fisher, seconded by Moore, whereas communication strategies are important to ensure residents and stakeholders are kept informed, whereas Council feels that it would be prudent to review alternate forms of communication Be it therefore resolved that staff be directed to provide a report outlining the township's current communication strategies and their costs, and further that the report include options for alternative forms of print, social, and other types of media for council's consideration. The township is committed to open communication and strives to provide accurate, timely, and accessible communications to stakeholders. Occasionally, it is beneficial for the township to revisit the market to determine options for actively engaging residents and stakeholders of the municipality. This report is designed to present council with options for delivering communications that can meet the needs of our growing municipality in a time when there is continuous rapid evolution in methods and tools to communicate, and an increasing expectation of additional engagement opportunities from the municipality to residents. This report can be broken down into 2 sections. The first section provides council with 4 options for paid print advertising in newspapers. Those options are: option 1, the township continue with the ongoing services of the Springwater News on a biweekly basis and does not engage the regular services of the Barrie Advance. Option 2, that the township advertises on a biweekly basis shared between the Barrie Advance and the Springwater News. As a result, the township would reduce the existing services of the Springwater News to once a month and engage the services of the Barrie Advance to once a month. That the township, option 3 would be that the township advertises on a weekly basis shared between the Barrie Advance and the Springwater News. As only the Barrie Advance advertises weekly or publishes weekly, the township has the option of offsetting publishing, resulting in a weekly presence throughout the community. And option 4 would be that the township engages the services of the Barrie Advance on a biweekly basis and cancels the regular biweekly services of the Springwater News. The second portion of the report provides additional communication options for council's consideration, including print media, radio, signage, digital marketing, paid social media marketing, engagement platforms, as well as a mobile phone application. Staff is available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for that. I will now open the floor up for discussion. Do I have to get an option on the floor before we have discussion? No, thank you. Members of council, are there any questions or comments? Councillor Fisher?
I actually to Nicole, I just want to explore the option. I believe you brought it to us about a mailer and what the cost would be for a mailer.
Sorry, officer. I wanted to say manager and I knew it wasn't manager, so I do apologize for that, but Officer Audette, yes. So if I can get the answer, thank you. Or just general, we'll just go with that.
Through your worship to Councillor Fisher. In terms of mail out, there's a couple of considerations that have to be thought of. So the first would be printing costs as well as mailing costs. The options that I provided were the first would be the printing costs, which option 1 would be to take an 11x17, print on both sides in color, fold it in half. So it would be an 8.5x11 4-page flyer, and then fold that again so that it meets within Canada Post standard distribution sizes. The cost for the printing of that 12,000 pieces would be, I have a quote, and of course these quotes can vary depending on market prices, but $1,595 plus HST. If you were to reduce that to an 8.5x11 and print on both sides in full color, again, 12,000 pieces, the cost would be $1,295,000 plus HST. So that would be the first portion that you would need to consider. The second would be the mailing cost. This is where it gets a bit trickier because through distribution with Canada Post neighborhood mailing, it goes by postal codes. So you can't specifically limit it to Springwater's boundaries. Just a quick preliminary view, I was able to narrow it down to about 11,600 properties, which is about 2,000 properties outside of Springwater's borders. Given additional time, I might be able to get those routes down. It would just take some time with Canada Post to determine which walks we could get rid of. The cost to distribute either of those first options, so 11,600 pieces at 17.6 cents per piece would be $2,041.60 plus HST. Additional considerations with that option, with a mail out option, would be the staff time required to prepare a document like that, as well as coordinating with the printer, preparing the mailing, which includes the sorting, packaging, and delivery to Canada Post. as well as the labeling, of that. So those are just a couple things that need to be considered if going with a mail out option.
Follow on Counselor Fisher and then Counselor Thompson.
So with the 8.5 by 11, 12,000 pieces for $1,295, is that a color print, both sides?
Officer Audette?
Through your worship, Councillor Fisher, yes, it would be color, for color both sides.
Could we do it without color?
Through your worship, yes, it is possible to do it. I don't have those prices currently. Typically, the prices don't vary too much if you're going with a professional print. I could get those prices at a later date, though.
Counselor Thompson and then Deputy Cabral.
Through our chair to our communications officer, would there be any benefit to our township in advertising through a mailer as opposed to the way we're doing it now?
Officer Audette?
There are definitely advantages and disadvantages to both advertising through a newspaper versus advertising just directly in the mail. Really, some people will open the newspaper and read it because they're interested in what's included in the newspaper. And some people don't read their newspaper. The same could be said for flyers that people are receiving in the mail. Some people go through them diligently and some people don't. So there are there's no way to guarantee that every person is going to read what we put out. That being said, the Springwater News is delivered through Canada Post, so it would be going to people's mailboxes as well.
I have Deputy Cabral and then Counselor Fisher.
Well, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I appreciate that. And I will have a question for Communications Officer Audette. I know that I have on a number of occasions probably brought up the idea of a mailer. I'm a little bit surprised at the cost. And the only reason I can say this is because the 8.5, a lot of us produced our own brochures. And that seems quite high for what I paid. Having said that, mine was in full color, matte finish. However, I'm just trying to look at what we're currently doing. We're currently doing 2 colors. And from your response to me, based on my questions, the content's being produced by us and being shipped to them print ready. I see the opportunity to, even if it was newsprint per se, maybe even 1 or 2 pages as opposed to 1, a mailer. I think maybe the first one might be a bit tricky, but just like the Springwater Link, once you've got that format set up, you're just punching in the information. What I do like about it is it's totally controllable by township. The other thing I like about it is it offers complete flexibility as well, timely for whatever we want to do. We're not tied down to anybody's publication dates. We control all the content. And as far as the placement and direction, I do see it a wee bit different because when I get the Barrie Advance, I'll be honest with you, I'm more interested in the flyers. But at the same time, Springwater News comes to the house. Yes, I will leaf through it. The difference with a flyer is if it says Springwater News on it, and that's the document all by itself, I can kind of see residents saying, do I want to know what Springwater Township has to tell me? Rather than some folks who simply either throw the advance in the garbage or they throw the Springwater News in the recycling, not garbage. So I kind of am leaning in that direction. It also takes us, I think, out of the realm where we have to, do this one or do that one with the actual media print folks that we have access to. So those are my comments. It's not an option on here. I would have been nice maybe to have seen it at least, but we're discussing it. So that's good. Thank you.
I
Counselor
concur.
Fisher?
Thank you. I concur with Deputy Mayor Cabral. I think there's something psychological when you get something in the mail with Springwater letterhead. I think people are much more apt to open it up and read it, not knowing, is it a tax bill? Is it something that's pertinent to me? So I think psychologically, we're actually going to have more coverage and more people reading what we want them to. And I think our goal here is really to reach more residents from the south end to the north end to have more coverage. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Before I do go to Counselor Garwood, I just would like to make comment. In the report, I like the idea of the app to be quite honest. I find with the conversation about direct mailers and if the township's going to make a change, I think the change should be one of this century and in a progressive way. I find that people don't necessarily go to any print source. There's lots of people who rely fully on their device. And I think that if we're going to look for a way to, yes, there are people who go through their mail. Yes, there are people who read the newspaper, but there's people that do not neither and fully rely on push notifications. So I personally like the idea of reallocating some funding to put towards the possible development of an app. I think that it can go further than just what we're communicating. It can be timely, it can be relevant, and there's lots that are actually the two-way with the pings where residents can then communicate back to the township directly. So I know that's not one of the options either, but that's myself. Well, there's a lot of work that's gone into the mailer. It's not something that is of interest to myself. I don't think that we're going to reach anybody new. I think it's going to be the same people who were opening the paper that would open up the envelope at home. So back to Councillor Garwood and then Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. While I wasn't going to speak about the app, I think about the county's app, right? I think many of us use that. I know I would forget to put the garbage out if it wasn't for that county app. So pretty happy about that. I just wanted to direct a question through the mayor to Officer Audette. I'm just looking at option 2 here, and I wanted to ask a question specifically here. So if we look at option 2 that says that the township advertises on a bi-weekly basis share between the Barrie Advance and the Springwater News. As a result, the township would reduce the existing services of the Springwater News to once a month and engage the services of the Barrie Advance to once a month. In theory, those are the existing full pages that are in existence. Thank you. Would it be possible to amend that in theory, should council wish to go down this road, and still advertise with both the Springwater News and bring in the Barrie Advance, but to half pages bi-weekly? So we're still communicating municipal wide. We're bringing in the Barrie Advance, but we're just lowering our page space in half. So in theory, and again, maybe the Barrie Advance costs more, so I'll ask you to clarify that. But in theory, we could still keep around that $2,382.25. Just throwing it out there.
Officer Audette.
Through your worship to Councillor Garwood, that's certainly an option. Typically, when I create the Springwater link, it's information that I'm collecting from staff members who are requesting their information be shared, whether it's programs or open houses we have going on, those sorts of things. I don't know that a half page would always meet our needs. So if I was restricted to a half page, it may be difficult to do that. Some weeks it would certainly be possible, but some weeks we may require 2. So it's hard to say.
Thank you. Follow on, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and thank you, Officer Audette. I appreciate that. I guess really, and this is more of just a comment in general. While I absolutely agree that we should look at other communication options 100%, I think we need to ensure that we're connecting with every resident in Springwater. I do have concern about the Barrie Advance's reach to the northern part of the municipality. I understand from communication with Officer Audette that Metrolands does deliver to Elmvale. However, some of the rural areas surrounding Elmvale may not receive door-to-door delivery. Metrolands has a number of community mailboxes in locations throughout the township, including the Foodland and the Water Spring in the community. But there definitely is not a, I guess, the reach isn't as great as the Springwater News is in the Elmvale community right now. That's all. I'm not saying that I don't want the Barrie Advance. I'm just concerned about its reach and the northern part of the community. Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I think my concern too with the Springwater News right now is when I look at the circulation, it's to 20,000 households, but our household number is around 11,600. So we're actually paying for advertising that goes out to Tay Township, Clearview, lots of residents that really have no interest in Springwater Township. So, you know, to the same argument that Barrie Advance doesn't reach up to Elmvale, I think, you know, the Springwater News is reaching too many. So I do like the direct mail idea. Because I do think it goes to every single household, first of all. And secondly, I love the app idea. I love it. So if I don't know if that's something we couldn't look at now. It's expensive. I realize we may need to incorporate that in the next budget, but if we could find some funds to start that process and development, I'd be thrilled. But the direct mail option for me right now, I believe is the right way to go because it does direct the mail to each and every single household.
Counselor Fisher?
Just to circle back, I completely agree with the mayor. I think in time, we should be moving in that direction we should be moving to something in this century, right? As you put it, and I completely agree. I think in the interim though, as we do that, and it shouldn't take us long to, I believe the direct mailer is the way to go. We get the full coverage we want. We engage people. I believe we'll have better engagement and it would give us time to move towards an app, maybe within the next budget.
I have Deputy Cabral and then Counselor Fisher. Sorry, Counselor Thompson.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a point there. I think one of the reasons I in the past wasn't too keen on the Barrie Advance was the fact that I didn't get it. However, I do get it. I get it quite regularly. As a matter of fact, I think I get it before people get it delivered to their house now. I go to the water kiosk. But an interesting thing about the Barrie Advance is years and years ago, we used to actually get the Midland Mirror at the north end of Springwater Township. So when you're talking about coverage for a weekly newspaper, the Barrie Advance does provide coverage to all of Springwater Township, just not necessarily coverage to everyone's house. The other point I wanted to bring up, and this is in respect of Mayor Coughlin, and I think this can actually dovetail together quite nicely, to be honest with you, is because of the flexibility that the direct mailer would provide to us. I mean, we don't necessarily have to send one out every 2 weeks. We could send one out when we choose to. And even if it's an 8.5, we're getting both sides. So really an 8.5, both sides, you're getting what you get in the newspaper anyway, a full page. The app idea, I think, is really good. And I think that if we were to, even for a test phase, go with the direct mailer and work towards the app in the background, and certainly no offense to being in the new century, there's a lot of folks out there that, you know, I hate to say it, but we've all ran into them when we were on the campaign trail who do not have ready access to apps and phones. Like there's folks out there that are still walking around with a flip phone and still walking around with no flip phone. It's just a cell phone. So I think we have to be mindful that maybe we're not quite at the stage where an app, I love the idea of an app, and I liked reading about that in the report. So I'm kind of leaning towards the flexibility and control that the direct flyer will offer us, but I think it also provides an open door to moving forward with the app at the same time, if that's an easy way to put it.
And just on that point, before I go to Counselor Thompson, I wasn't suggesting that we get rid of all print media. It was just in complement. I think it would reach a higher demographic of people. Thompson, and then Ms. Alexander and what?
Through our through the chair to our
General.
communications officer. So I heard you correctly that the flyer, we would have the same difficulty we now have with the Springwater News and going to people that aren't residents because it goes by postal code. So that wouldn't really solve the problem of not sending it to people who aren't members of Springwater. Because I think right now the Springwater News goes to at least 7,500 residents of the city of Barrie simply because of postal code. So we would have that situation east, west, north, and south, correct?
Officer Odette?
Through your worship to Councillor Thompson. Yes, it's not possible to completely eliminate outliers due to the way the postal code drops work. That being said, I have in the past been successful in working with Canada Post to bring the numbers down to eliminate some walks that are, you know, in Wasaga Beach or in the city of Barrie that don't have any residents from the township. That being said, some of their routes do include both Springwater residents and residents from the city of Barrie, for instance, and we're not able to eliminate them if we do want to include all Springwater residents.
I have Counselor Alexander, right?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So thank you, Officer Adet, for all the options. A lot of information. I originally was leaning towards kind of a split of the Springwater News, Barrie Advance. And thank you for answering my questions over email about the distribution. I did find just personally polling some of my neighbors, because I know I don't get it, and I know I never asked not to get it, and we used to get it. At least in Phelpston, it's hit or miss on who gets it. And I'm talking like people across the street from me get it. I don't get it. I get flyers, somebody like, so there's really no rhyme or reason to what's going on there. I do really like the direct mail out. I think it actually does. When you get a newspaper, people either can choose to read the newspaper or not. They don't necessarily what goes in there. In terms of communicating with our residents, if it comes from the Township of Springwater, they are making the conscious decision that they don't care. Maybe they don't care. That's not the right words. They don't want to read it versus I don't want to look through a newspaper. So I feel like we are spoon feeding as much as we can the information we're trying to get to our residents with that option. So even I would like to explore that one further. And as well, to Mayor Coughlin's point, I would love to, even if it's just further direct staff to kind of start building what it would be to have this mobile app. So potentially we could have it in next year's budget, because I do think that is a great way to get our message out.
I believe it was Moore next. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I'd like to propose a motion then now. That's okay. And I'll ask the clerk to read what she has prepared.
Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. So based on the conversation, I've included a few things, so please let me know what you would like changed. So the motion would read that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to remove options 1, 2, 3, 4 and add option 5. That the township advertises on a bi-weekly basis through an 8x5x11 direct mail advertisement. I would also recommend in that council would state that the bi-weekly services with the Springwater News be eliminated if council would like to go with the direct mailer. And in addition, that council hereby direct staff to report back regarding a township mobile application for council's consideration. Are there any additions that you would like to add?
Councilor Alexander, and then I do have comment.
Okay, can I do, is this when I do a friendly amendment?
Absolutely. Actually, I would need a seconder. I need a seconder for that first. Oh, sorry. Seconder first was Councilor Fisher, and then back to Councilor Alexander.
Okay, I would, in the direct mail out line of bi-weekly, I would almost want to say at staff's, just either bi-weekly or monthly at staff's direction, like direction of discretion. That's the word I'm looking for. It's been a long night.
Before I do go to Deputy Cabral, if moving to a direct mailer to get to more people, I think fully removing the presence of our municipality from our local newspaper, there are people who absolutely go to that paper to find out exactly what's happening. They choose to open it, just like there's going to be people that choose not to open that. I think that it's been effective communication. I do think that moving out entirely is not something that I would be able to support, but it's just me. But if we wanted to alter the size and understanding that maybe we move to a monthly presence and then the mailer on the opposites or whatever it would be, but I think having them together would be a preference of mine. And before I go to Fisher, it was Deputy Cabral did have his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Actually, this is going to be kind of a thought here, just because that 17 cents for the neighborhood mail. And the concern that, yeah, some of the routes do go up into Oro-Medonte, some of the routes do reach out to the beach. And I would think that, having heard what you've said, that you'd be able to mitigate some of that. I'm also curious to know if it's 80% of the folks are on the direct mail route, then it might not hurt too much to cut those other ones out. But if only a handful of folks were in Springwater Township on the route, say 40 or 50 are on the route and the rest of them are in the beach, there is mailing options that are less than regular postage stamp type of mail, that it might be a little bit more costly, but for the smaller groups that we might actually be sending out to, it might be cost effective for us to look at that rather than just do the whole mail out thing, as Councillor Thompson was indicating it might be present a problem. So just a thought.
CEO Schmidt, you had your hand up?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. Just as council is discussing the options, staff would just, if we could get some direction, if you will, as to when you would like this to be effective, only because it will take a little bit of time to transition. So we just want to make sure that on the same page here, that it's not like May 4th that this is happening, right? So with all due respect, if we're looking at maybe a June 1st effective date or maybe a July 1st to give staff a little bit of time to transition and also notify the other players that may no longer be part of the program.
Thank you. And I have Councillor Fisher. And before I do go to Garwood and Moore, we always hear at the beginning of our meetings, in accordance with the Planning Act, we are required to advertise. So would that still go out through a paper then? Because it always says sorry, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. Yes, there are still some legislative requirements that require advertising in a newspaper that has circulation in the municipality. This would not affect that. We would still be required to meet that legislation for various types of public meetings or whatnot.
Thank you. Councillor Garwood.
So thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So just so I have this accurate here, if I'm looking and just doing some quick math, again, I'm not good at math, but we currently spend with the Springwater News $1,841.67 per month. And we would be looking at, if we went with the 8.5 by 11 at 12,000 pieces, which is the $1,295 plus HST, plus the cost to actually mail, which would be the $2,041.60. That's roughly $3,336.60 plus HST bi-weekly. Correct?
At their discretion.
Sure, at their discretion, but we just discussed, I believe, in the motion that Councillor Moore brought forth, it said bi-weekly via a mailer. So therefore, we are looking at nearing $7,000 a month in communication with direct mailer, where right now we're spending $1,841. I completely agree that we should be looking at other alternatives, and I think direct mail is a fantastic idea. But I do have deep concern in regards to completely removing our presence in the Springwater News. I think folks throughout the municipality utilize the paper to figure out what's going on in Springwater Township. And again, having been a lifelong resident of the northern part of Springwater, I believe that it is absolutely important. And that's what I've heard from my residents as well. And I just do have a bit concern of not having a presence in that paper. Thank you.
I have Councillor Fisher and then Deputy Cabral.
I don't believe we're here to lobby for local businesses. They stand alone. They have their own business practices and they will live and die by them. I think that our main concern is to reach the vast majority of residents from the north to the south. As discussed in this council before, the amount of readership of the Springwater paper in at least the south end of the ward is not prevalent. So I believe that going towards a mailer at our discretion, it does not have to be bi-weekly. I think quite often it will end up being monthly, is the smart way to go.
Thank you. And what I'm hearing from council is that there's no pushback to a direct mailer. There's just pushback to removing ourselves from a form of media that we have been using and that our residents have become accustomed to since amalgamation. So And that's fine that there's disagreements, and I understand that. And as we've learned earlier today, and we all know, we hear from different people. So the fact that you're hearing one thing and you're hearing another thing doesn't mean you're not hearing the truth. It's just different people, how they want to get their communication. So I have Cabral, Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just, it was a friendly amendment, I think, that was being proposed by Councillor Alexander with respect to it being discretionary. And it never really even managed to make it. However, on speaking about the costs, and with all due respect to Councillor Garwood, I think what we were hearing is it's not necessary to have a color brochure. It's not necessary to go with the big piece of paper. And it's not necessarily even something that we might be able to have to do with a glossy type of paper. And as I said, even from my own experience back in the fall, it seems like it might be a little bit much, and maybe we have opportunity to reduce that, I think, substantially going forward.
And I'm just going to go back to Councillor Alexander with my apologies. You did ask for a friendly amendment and I didn't follow through with it. So can you repeat for me what you were asking?
To have the line changed from bi-weekly to bi-weekly or at staff's discretion.
Thank you. And you're amendable to that? That's been amended. Any more comments? Yeah, I mean, we can move forward to the vote if there's nothing more to be said, but I would like to express my concern. I think that there are many residents who do go to the Springwater newspaper or the newspaper to get their information. So while I like the idea of us transitioning and trying to find whether it's an online through Barrie Today or whatever, if we're not going to the advance for another print media, if we wanted to look at different options, but to remove ourselves completely from the Springwater News is not something I would support. And CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Three members of council, just on the friendly, if I could ask or suggest maybe three members of council, if we could maybe consider a minimum, so a minimum once a month or a minimum every other month or a minimum quarterly, just so that the discretionary piece, I don't want to get into some, you know where I'm going with that.
Not a problem. Thank you. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. And I wanted to circle back to the Deputy Mayor's comments. I completely agree with the Deputy Mayor. I think absolutely we should look at other less expensive options. I think, again, just doing the math, if we were to do it twice a month, it is a lot of money. And circling back to previous discussion, we often discuss making decisions based upon dollar figures that we know of. Well, I see where we're probably going here. If this is the direction, I would feel more comfortable knowing exactly what we're going to be spending a month. So if it is going to be a mailer, and again, while I very much respect Officer Audette for bringing forth so much information, there's only so much that we can ask for, right? And I think if we can maybe ask for a bit more information in regards to if we do go down to a smaller size, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, if we do go down to a black and white option, as the Deputy Mayor mentioned, what that would cost and maybe what some of those options would look like if we were a bi-weekly, if we were a monthly, so then we can make a more informed decision. While again, I absolutely oppose not having a presence in the Springwater News. I am one vote and I understand that, and we need to do what's best for all residents in Springwater. So I would just request that we get those dollar figures before we make a decision, because in theory, right now, we're making a decision on potentially $7,000 a month, potentially.
Thank you. And I just have a question, just on the process that's involved with this, because I literally am picturing you sitting at your desk folding 1,000+ pieces of paper and stamps and 12,000. So is this something that happens like that's included in the price, or is this how much manual labor is going to be involved in this?
Through your worship, the first time I did a mail out, I did count every piece and packaged it all myself. Since then, I've become a little more experienced and I know what to ask for from the printer. So I would send in the print file ready to print. They would print it, fold it, bundle it for me, but then I would need to do the Canada Post part, which includes putting in the order, packaging those bundles of 200 into appropriate packages. So counting out however many packages I need, placing them in boxes, labeling them, and then bringing them to the Canada Post Distribution Center in Barrie. And then from there, they would distribute to the various outlets throughout Springwater Township to be delivered to mailboxes.
Thank you for that. Councillor Moore and then Thompson.
Thank you. Mayor Coghlan, through you, I don't know if maybe CAO Schmidt knows the answer to this or not, but do you have a rough idea of what it costs to send out, say, our tax billing? Or like, we know we address the envelopes and the envelope. What does that cost? What it goes to exactly every homeowner?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coghlan, to Councillor Moore. I don't. Director Radigan's on the call and I don't want to put her on a spot, but she might be able to. I'm not sure if our deputy treasurer Lenko's on the call, but I don't know if Director Radigan might have that number. I don't know. My apologies.
Director Radigan?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to members of council. I unfortunately do not have that information handy. I can definitely provide that information first thing by the end of this week, if council wishes.
Thank you. Clerk Ainsworth?
Thank you. I can provide a comparison with the pins that were mailed out for the election. So it would be the same size as a tax bill, same weight. The mailing for that was approximately 70 to 80 cents per piece with a direct address on each item.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson?
Through the chair to our communications officer. So I agree with Councillor Garwood. I would ask for a little more time on making this decision. So we have more information on exactly what it's going to cost us, including your time and effort on your part. And I would also ask, have we ever gone to our residents and polled them? I know we do lots of studies and actually ask them how they would like to be communicated with.
Officer Adet?
Through your worship to Councillor Thompson, there was a communications survey that was completed approximately 4 years ago. There was no definitive preferential communications method. It really depended on age, location, just different preferences for how they like to receive their news. So nothing really stood out as this is the way we have to go or that sort of thing. It was really quite varied across the township.
Follow on to Councillor Thompson's question. Oh, sorry, you follow on then I'll.
Sorry, follow up. Could we receive that survey? Could we get a copy of that? Okay.
Thank you. And I to your best recollection, was direct mailer and mobile app a part of that? And the reason is I do recall a portion of it, but I think that if we're gonna, it's nice to have information from 4 years ago, but if this council is looking towards a direct mailer and a mobile app and newsprint or even the online, even if we did have that information, these may or may not have been included in that.
Through your worship, I don't recall. I was actually not here at the time. I was on leave when the survey was completed. Given a couple minutes, I might be able to look it up.
That's fine. I do like the idea of going back out to the community, but simply like not hiring a consultant, not bringing in anybody, like literally like a survey monkey. Here's the link. We want to hear from you. Give them a month or whatever it is to make that, to like hear back from them. And I get that putting a survey monkey is maybe leaning towards people who choose their devices versus putting it in the paper. So we are going to get that, but I think it's important for us to get an understanding of what our residents actually want from us. CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think just to clarify to members of council, so the information that's in the report for a direct mail, I think, you know, the idea would be is if the direction is to do that, is to authorize staff to do that, we would obviously be going back out and getting quotes and hopefully reducing those costs. If we're going to be doing direct mails on a more frequent basis, the idea would be to try to get as low as cost as possible. So again, I think that the numbers that are here, we're here to provide a ballpark figure. But again, if we do this on a more frequent basis, there may even be other providers out there that we're not aware of today that might be able to help us with this. So again, if provided that direction, we could definitely do a little bit more research and possibly even put out a procurement to see if there's other businesses out there or service providers.
Sorry, CEO Schmidt, if you could just elaborate on that, you mean service providers, like a company that we could hire to do the direct mailing as a third party?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, again, not my area of expertise, but that would be my intent is if there are other providers out there. Obviously, I think communication or the officer Adet would still be preparing the document, but the printing and all the other pieces that she mentioned, there may be other providers out there that may be able to assist. So hence not having to maybe waste our valuable time on some of those things, if you will. So.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion before us. So if it, I myself would like to see staff report back to us. I don't know if in that time we can put a survey out just to see if we can garner some interest from members of the public. Sorry, Deputy Cabral, I can see you and I can hear you and I am trying to communicate, but
Her amendment.
her amendment's been dealt with. Yes, no, it was a friendly amendment. No, it was a friendly amendment that did not require a vote. Yes, okay. So yeah, so at this time, I don't know. I would like this to be reported back on because there are no, we don't know what the actual dollar value or time commitment is to it. I also, or minimum once a month, yes. I don't know if that's amendable to staff or if we would have to deal with this first, but sorry, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. So there is an amendment on the table from Councillor Moore, and it's seconded that township advertised through the direct mail bi-weekly or as determined by township needs with a minimum of once per month. Canceling the services with Springwater News. I've added a piece in there as requested by CAO Schmidt of an effective date for the change. And I've put in July 1st, depending on the conversation council would like to have about the date. And then with the addition of staff reporting back regarding the mobile application for consideration. So that amendment is on the table. Should council wish to, council would have to deal with this. And if the motion is approved, that's what would go forward. If the motion is defeated, then somebody could propose an amendment to request a report back on the additional information that's been discussed.
Okay, and that's no problem. And I don't have a problem with this option. It's just that there's no financial implications associated with it. So it's tough to vote on what it is. And Councillor Fisher, I'm sorry. And I would like to just ask for decorum. Like I'm continually being interrupted as I'm speaking, and it is kind of difficult to guide it. And I do try my best to get to everyone. So if I can just ask that if you disagree with what I'm saying, that's fine. If we could just hold that in. Councillor Fisher.
Yeah, well, I do believe we've actually been given numbers for it. And actually, Mr. Schmidt just spoke to it, that we should actually see those numbers decrease. So to hear we haven't heard numbers and we shouldn't move ahead with it, I don't believe is correct. I also believe we should move ahead with it tonight. We've given staff, I believe 6 weeks or so to come back with us, and they have come back to us with options and numbers. So I don't think there's any reason to go back and have them take a look at more numbers. Also, too, I don't believe that SurveyMonkey gives an accurate representation of our entire Springwater. So I would like to vote on it tonight and move ahead with it. I don't think there's any reason not to.
Thank you for that. And I can understand, and I'm very aware of your passion to move in this direction. It's simply asking for information. But if they're calling the vote and not wanting the rest of us to have the ability to understand the options, and we just heard our CIO suggest that we go out to an RFP to see or RFQ to see if there's more information available that way. So it's not that I'm saying I won't support this when it comes forward. All right. So I guess at this time, council, if there's nothing further to be added, I think we've heard from each other. So I will read that the motion before council, Councillor Thompson.
Could I request a recorded vote?
Absolutely. That the township, option 5, that the township advertises through an 8x511 direct mail advertisement bi-weekly or is determined by the township needs at a minimum of once a month. And further, that the township cancels the bi-weekly services with the Springwater News. And further, that the change in the advertising be effective July 1st, and that council hereby directs staff to report back regarding the township mobile application for council's consideration. And we have a request for a recorded vote.
Thank you. When I state your name, please state yes or no. Councillor Garwood.
No.
Councillor Alexander.
Yes.
Councillor Thompson.
No.
Councillor Moore.
Yes.
Councillor Fisher.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Cabral.
Yes.
And Mayor Coughlin.
No.
That motion is carried. The amendment, my apologies, is carried.
Thank you. And my original mover and seconder were Councillor Garwood and Deputy Cabral. And I'm gonna assume that Councillor Garwood may not want to move this as directed. Oh, it was done before, so it stands. Sorry, you have to move this. So moved by Garwood and seconded by Deputy Cabral. That the reports from the communication officer regarding the communication options dated May 3rd, 2023 be received, and that council goes with option 5. Is there any other discussion? And seeing none, all those in favor? And those opposed? And that has carried. Moving on now to action items. May I have a mover and a seconder to approve the action items? Councillors Garwood and Moore. That action items, sorry, before I move on to that, does council want to pull any for redirection? I believe 8.2 has been requested to be pulled. Is there any additional that would like to be? All right. That action report items 8.3 to 8.9 be received, and that the recommendations contained therein be approved as presented. 8.3 award of the tender of the 2023-07 iOS gravel crushing and hauling. 8.4 award of tender 2023-09 iOS microsurfacing and surface treatment. 8.5 the award of program management of roads, water mains, and sewers projects of the 2023 State of Good Repair projects with options for 2024-2022-49 PW. 8.6 Stone Manor Woods reduction in securities for all phases. 8.7 acquisition of road widening 1546 Floss Road 4 East. 8.8 drainage agreement acceptance. 8.9 zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023-001 with the exception of 8.2. Any discussion on these before we? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried, and we will now move to 8.2, which is our land acknowledgement. May I have a mover and seconder to approve the report regarding the land acknowledgement statement? Councillors Alexander and Garwood, that the report dated May 3rd, 2023 from the Deputy Clerk regarding the land acknowledgement and draft policy be received, and that Council of the Township of Springwater adopt the short form and long form acknowledgement statements as outlined within the report, and that subject to amendments, council adopt the land acknowledgement policy as attached in Appendix A. Are there any questions or discussions on this motion? Councillor Garwood?
More of, thank you, Mayor Coughlin. More of just a statement. I wanted to thank the Deputy Clerk Marshal for working hard on putting this report together, and all members of staff, and that's all. Thank you.
Any other comments? Deputy Cabral?
I'm looking at the motion and I'm just curious to know exactly what this is going to entail. Does it show any kind of a schedule or anything like that? I know that there was reference to certain municipalities and the county of Simcoe and how they utilize it. Is that something that's coming later? Is that something we're going to be discussing right now? Because I didn't get a sense of when this land acknowledgement would be occurring.
I have Clerk Ainsworth and Deputy Clerk Marshall.
Thank you, through the mayor. What the end result of this motion would be to approve the land acknowledgement policy, which was attached to the report. It would take effect immediately, and staff would then follow through with the items outlined within the policy. So the policy outlines when and where the township would utilize the short form acknowledgement versus the long form acknowledgement. And that would be put into place should council approve this motion this evening.
Follow on, Deputy.
Please. Well, I did read it. I'm still not sure. The policy states that it's going to happen. The short one would happen at this location at this time, and the long one be utilized in these particular circumstances. Could you elaborate on that?
Clerk Ainsworth? I'm going to actually go to Deputy Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. So the idea of the short form land acknowledgement, there's a potential there to have it read, at the beginning of council meetings. It could be utilized at different committee meetings, board meetings, that type of thing. And then the long form land acknowledgement, the idea there was that it would be used at more of those special events such as the inaugural meeting. And the idea was also that the long form land acknowledgement could be printed and hung, framed in council chambers or in the front lobby of the admin center. But the policy again is subject to any amendments that council wishes to make. So in my report, you are correct. I did outline the various municipalities that currently do have land acknowledgements. And for example, the County of Simcoe does only use their land acknowledgement at special events only. So it was utilized at their inaugural meeting in for this new term of council, and it is not used at council meetings. So there is flexibility there, and I would say most use the land acknowledgement at council meetings, but again, that's up to council. You can amend the policy if you wish.
Follow on, Cabral, Garwood, Fisher.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that clarification, because I did get a little bit muddled in exactly when we were going to be utilizing, but it still seems now from hearing what you've presented to us that it's open. I'm just going to provide my thoughts on this. I think although the municipalities seem to be engaged in doing it on a more regular basis, the county does it at special events. I would actually like to see, I don't like to see things just become routine for the sake of being routine. I think they lose their meaning at that point. I would like to see it happen at events that we are at collectively as a council, or as was mentioned, the inaugural. And I would also like to see more of a celebration that we could include at a specific date, maybe towards September, with the events that happen at that time. Truth and Reconciliation come to mind, that we could participate in, raise the flag, and really kind of celebrate. Well, sad to say we'll be celebrating it during that kind of an event, but I think you hear where I'm coming from, that it actually does make a statement rather than just reading it out at a council. So I'd be a little bit, not a little bit, I think I'd be more prone to adopting the Simcoe County model, but I would like to include something a little bit more official that could actually illustrate maybe even photo opportunity in front of the framed land acknowledgement, raising of the flag, a day that council could actually almost set aside as part of a regular council meeting, or even a special council meeting for that matter, to actually do something that would be meaningful.
Thank you, Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I completely agree with the Deputy Mayor. When I brought this forward, I believe at our first meeting back in November, I thought it was just a step in the right direction to have a land acknowledgement. So with the indulgence of the Deputy Mayor, I'd like to maybe put forth a recommendation that we adopt that the land acknowledgement is stated by the mayor or designate at special events as deemed appropriate. Thank you.
Clerk Ainsworth, have that typing away there, and I did have Councillor Fisher as well.
I actually agree with the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Garwood. Mirroring the county makes sense. I also believe that if we're doing it every single council meeting, it does lose its meaning. I think it does become routine. But if we are acknowledging our First Nations at special occasions, I believe that there is some education through reconciliation at that point. Thank you.
Clerk Ainsworth, you have an amendment here.
Thank you. Just to touch on that, I think too that it also provides opportunity that on those events, we are out in the public at different various locations. Could be a town hall meeting, could be anything like that, where there's going to be, sorry to say, not a whole lot of folks here. for our regular meetings anyway. But I still would like staff to come back with the potential of looking at having a specific day for us to actually do something special in recognition of it. So I don't know if that's something we need to include or whether that's something that just can come back to staff from staff.
Thank you, Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. I have included something to that notion within the amendment. So what I would recommend is that the motion now before council be amended as follows: to amend the policy as follows, that the land acknowledgement that be utilized for special events yearly at an organized event for National Truth and Reconciliation Day and as deemed appropriate. And that would provide the direction as well for staff to organize an event. It's held in September, near the end of September, and we could organize it in conjunction with that.
And then I would just require a mover and seconder for the amendment just read. I have Councillors Fisher and Moore. Clerk Ainsworth.
Thank you. And just to clarify, this would be for the section for the short form wording. The long form is already established for the inaugural meeting. So it would be for that section.
Thank you. Council, we have an amendment before us that the land acknowledgement be utilized for special events yearly at an organized event for for National Truth and Reconciliation Day and as deemed appropriate. All those in favor? That amendment has carried. And we would go back then to the main motion if there's no other comments or questions. So I did have that moved in second, correct? Yes. And then I'll just read it again here, that the report dated May 3rd, 2023 from the Deputy Clerk regarding the land acknowledgement and draft policy be received, and that Council of the Township of Springwater adopt a short form and long form acknowledgement statements as outlined within the report and subject to amendment, and that Council, I'm going to take that out, Council adopt the land acknowledgement policy attached as Appendix A as amended. All those in favor? And that has carried. We're now on to information reports. May I have a mover and seconder for the information reports, please? Garwood and Moore. That the report items listed here and be received for information. Zoning bylaw amendment ZB 2023-009, 1386 Penetanguishene Road, and 2, the Building Services Monthly Activity Report of March 2023. Are there any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. And we will now move on to our verbal reports. And I will begin with GM Ramdeo, if you're available.
Hi, Mayor Coughlin. I am available, but I do not have a report for today. Nothing new has developed in the last 2 weeks.
Thank you. And our county updates from Deputy Cabral.
I'm going to have to follow in General Manager Ramdeo's footsteps on this one. I do apologize. I don't have them, but I will make it up to council and our audience at a later date.
And the link was available on the agenda for any residents that did want to see what the county highlights were. I would like to thank our county colleagues. We did bring the Bill 5, the recommendation resolution from Springwater Township, which was endorsed by the County of Simcoe. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. And we have municipal updates. Councillor Thompson.
Would like to extend our congratulations to Linda and Larry Gallagher of Mill Circle on their 50th wedding anniversary, a wonderful accomplishment. Would also like to recognize Friends of Library that had a successful fundraiser at the Elmville Maple Syrup Festival this past weekend, and their book sales raised over $1,000, and thank them and their staff for their amazing efforts. And remind everybody this Saturday, May 6th is Backyard Project Day, and the Springwater Library will be there offering kids a construction craft. So please come one, come all, and have a wonderful day with us.
Are there any other municipal updates? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. This past weekend, we were all at the Maple Syrup Festival, which was on April the 29th. was a bit soggy, but a great attendance. I know, speaking to many of the folks involved in organizing the event, it was a great success. Obviously, new layout changes and whatnot, so folks were quite thrilled about that. I wanted to thank all of the volunteers. That festival operates on few hands, and they do an amazing job every single year. I want to congratulate Councillor Moore and Councillor Alexander on their group victory in the log sawing competition, and congratulate our friends from New Tecumseh for taking the other division. While Councillor Fisher and I didn't take home, the big victory, we still beat the deputy mayor and Councillor Thompson. So I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not going to gloat. Anyway, all seriousness, it was fantastic. And second item I wanted to mention is make sure you are picking up your Smile cookie. All the proceeds are going towards the Anvil Food Bank, May 1st through the 7th. I know I'll be there tomorrow with Councillor Alexander decorating some cookies. So if you're in the drive-through, watch out. They might not be pretty. Thanks.
Are there any other updates? I'm seeing none. We will now move on to notices of motion. This is moved by Councillor Fisher, so I will turn it to Councillor Fisher. Sorry, just your seconder first, which is Councillor Moore. That staff be directed to report to council on the feasibility potential mandate of the legislative requirements under the Drainage Act for the creation of a drainage committee.
There you go. Thank you.
I will let you speak to it though.
No, you did a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. And this is stemming from the agricultural.
Yeah, sorry. This is stemming from the Agricultural Committee. It was something that came up during our discussions. The need for the potential to have a drainage committee to inspect drains throughout Springwater.
And then this is to inspect drains. This would be separate from, I know during the Swaley drain, there was a drainage tribunal that members of council were appointed to. So this would that be a separate one?
It'll be separate.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from anybody on council? And seeing none, all those in favor? And that has carried. Are there any other notices of motion? Any items for future consideration? May I have a mover and seconder to approve the bylaws? Cabral and Garwood, that the bylaws listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. 2023-044 amend fees and charges bylaw. 2023-017 schedules B to J. 2023-045 establishing a public highway Thompson Way. 2023-046 acquire lands for public highway purpose. And 5000-369 ZB 2023-001 Johnson. Are there any comments or questions? And seeing none, all those in favor? That has been carried. And may I have a mover and seconder for the confirmatory bylaw? Moore and Fisher. That bylaw 2023-047 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council in the regular meeting held on May 3rd, 2023, listed herein be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That has carried. And may I have a mover and seconder to adjourn the meeting? Thompson and Garwood. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 7:48 p.m. to meet again in regular meeting on May 17th, 2023 at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Thank you, council. And we will take a quick bio break before we resolve back into closed